Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Farrah, and in today's video we're going to be doing my October wrap-up. It's coming a little late to you, but you know, that's kind of how it rolls on this channel, unfortunately. But I do have a couple books that I wanted to tell you guys about. October was a pretty fun reading month. I didn't participate in any particular challenges or reading events that I can think of. Maybe I accidentally did, but I just, was still kind of trying to mood read and read what I own. But I did get to quite a few books. I got to 8, which is a lot for me. So I'm going to go through them as quickly as I can because there's a lot to talk about. So first off, I had my daughters clean out their bookshelves last month just to kind of get rid of books that they didn't really want anymore or they've read and they didn't think they were going to reread. So a couple of books that they chose to donate, I wanted to read for myself before I donated them to my friend who's a teacher. So I did read a few graphic novels. This also really helped, if we're being honest, to help me reach my goal for the Read What You Own challenge. But whatever, All right, so anyway, the first book that I read is a graphic novel called Allergic, and this is by Megan Warner Lloyd and Michelle Mee Nutter. I think she's the illustrator. And this was really cute. This is I would say, younger side of the spectrum, middle grade, probably, upper elementary school, although I think any age that can read would love this and enjoy it. But this one was really cute. It tells the story of this little girl who's in 5th grade and she loves animals, and her parents finally tell them and her siblings that they can get a dog. So she's really excited. They go to the animal shelter, they adopt this really adorable puppy, and then come to find out she's severely allergic. So they have to find a new home for the dog. And she's devastated. She's absolutely devastated. And of course, her younger siblings are mad because they had to get rid of the dog too. So it just kind of tells the story of her, what it felt like to be allergic to animals when all she wanted to do was have a pet. It was kind of sad. It was really sad. If I think about it, if this happened to me when I was young, I would have been devastated. But it tells the story of how she kind of went through that and overcame it, and it had a really cute ending. And it also tells a little bit about her adjusting to her mom having a new baby. So this was really sweet, very cute, very well done graphic novel, and I really enjoyed it. And I do love that there's a book out there for kids that might be going through this, because this is the first one I've ever heard of, and it was really cute. Next, I read another middle grade graphic novel. This one is called Twins by Varian and illustrated by Shannon, Wright. And this tells the story of 2 young girls that are entering, I believe, 6th or 7th grade. They're about 11, 12, 13-ish. And they're identical twins. They're very, very close. But then at the start of this school year, one of the twins in particular wants to kind of push away from the other one. She wants to have her own identity. She wants to kind of have her own friend group, her own classes and extracurricular activities, while the other twin doesn't want that. She still wants to be with her twin sister 24/7, do all the same things, dress the same, have the same friend groups and all this stuff. So this was really good because they both end up running for class president against each other. And I thought this was really well done. Not only did it talk a bit about sibling rivalry and trying to be your own person when there's somebody else in your family that you've always grown up with and known that looks exactly like you. And I do have a twin sister. We are not identical though, so it's not like I could completely relate. But it was like these hidden feelings of feeling in competition with each other and not feeling good enough. And it was really, really well done, extremely well illustrated. And it really made me think a lot about my sister and our experiences in elementary school, middle school, and high school. And of course, it just got me thinking about all that stuff. And I don't feel we didn't have a rivalry or anything. I didn't really connect to it in that way. But I think this is a great book if you have any twins in your life. And then I did continue on in the Sunny series. This is books 2 and 3. I talked about Sunny Side Up in my September wrap up. These are just cute novels talking about this young girl named Sunny. It takes place in the 70s. So all of the artwork, all of the home decor, all of the toys they're playing with, it's such a throwback to the 70s and the 80s. And my childhood was in the 80s, but it felt very much the same. You know, a lot of things were the same. So I really loved it for that aspect. But it just follows Sunny. She is about 13, 14 years old. And in this book, we're still talking about how she's coping with her older brother's drug addiction. And he's gone off to boarding school, and she's just kind of navigating through middle school. And it's just a little bit of a continuation on from the first novel. And I really, really enjoyed it. It was such a well-told story about trying to cope with an older sibling that has addiction, while also trying to fit in middle school. This one was really good. This third one, though, was even better. This is Sunny a little bit older. Things have kind of resolved with her brother, and she's just trying to fit in middle school. And her girlfriends are getting really into boys and makeup and going to the mall and shopping and shoes, and she's just not there. She's not into it. And she makes friends with this group of boys that are really into playing Dungeons and Dragons, and she really loves it. And it's just a story of her trying to be true to herself and not go with the crowd, but to really enjoy her childhood and to just do what she wants and have fun. So I absolutely love this series. I actually got books 4 and 5 from the library that I'm going to be reading soon. But yeah, I wouldn't necessarily guess if kids now would love this series, because I think a huge part of the charm is the 70s throwbacks and the 70s references. In the second book, they reference a ton of TV shows from the late 70s, and in this one, they reference a ton of games from the 70s, early 80s. So I had a great time with these graphic novels. They were short and sweet, and they were good little palate cleansers. I also read my second ever TJ Klune novel, and this is called In the Lives of Puppets. And this is a standalone story. It's a adult, is it fantasy sci-fi? Kind of a fantasy sci-fi retelling of Pinocchio. It also, to me, had a lot of Wizard of Oz essence thrown in there as well, which I picked up on. So this one tells the story of a human guy named Vic. He's about 21 years old, and he grew up with his adopted father, Geo, who is an android. And we don't really know what's going on in the beginning, but we know that the world is filled with different robots and androids, and it's just kind of this futuristic, apocalyptic world where we don't even know if there's any humans left. So Vic has a couple different robot friends, a vacuum cleaner named Rambo, and a nurse robot who takes care of humans. Her name is Nurse Ratchet. And it just tells a story of them rescuing an android that they found in the local junkyard. It's a story about Vic having to rescue his dad when his dad goes missing, and their journey through to the land of the electric lights, and it just kind of explores the ideas of what it means to be human, what it means to have feelings and consciousness, and are these advanced robots really that different from the way humans are? I thought the writing was really good. The story itself was really interesting and different. And TJ Klune has a really amazing ability, to me, of creating characters that are very likable. They're funny. I laughed out loud so many times during this book. I did listen to it on audio, so I think part of that had to do with the audio narration performance, which was really, really well done. These one-liners that Nurse Ratchet had, she had some psychopathic tendencies, and just the way he wrote her dialogue and the way that he threw these little like quips in there, it just made me laugh so much. There's also a little tiny bit of a LGBTQ romance going on that was very, very sweet. The chemistry in those situations was really good. And it was just overall a very interesting, sweet story. My only critique maybe I would have is that it was pretty dialogue heavy. So I felt like some of the sections of dialogue just went on and on forever. But for the most part, it was really fun and I really enjoyed it. I probably gave this about 4 stars. So in October, I also finished reading the Bible. Finally, it took me about 2 years, and I will have a vlog about this, similar to Clarissa, which for anybody that watched that, thank you so much. I didn't think many people were going to click on that because it was really long, but I really appreciate all of you guys that watched that vlog. And yes, I started the Bible before I started a YouTube channel, and I vlogged my experience reading it. Now, for me, the Bible was listed on the greatest 100 books of all time list that I'm working off of. And the Bible's somewhere in the 30s, but I knew that if I waited until I got to this book, it would just put a huge halt in my progress through the list. So I wanted to read it kind of ahead of time and go slowly through it, because this, if we're being honest, is not a book that you can pick up and read large chunks of. At least I can't. So I started this about 2 years ago, and I was listening to a podcast called The Bible Recap to try to help me understand what was going on. Now, I grew up Catholic, Irish Catholic at that. And so I was, I grew up with a very strong religious base. As I got into my 20s, I started to deconstruct that a little bit, and I started to learn about other religions, especially Buddhism, and I got more interested in different spirituality paths. So I wouldn't say that I was interested in reading the Bible from a religious perspective, like a spirituality growth perspective. I was more interested in reading the Bible because I'm nosy and I just wanted to kind of see what all the fuss was about, Growing up, we didn't have a lot of exposure to the Bible, if you can believe it. It was way more focused on going to Mass and getting communion, and if you have a problem, tell Graham and she'll do the rosary for you. But it wasn't heavily based on reading the Bible, which I know other religions are, like Southern Baptist and things like that. So I'd never read it, and I really wanted to commit to finishing it. So it took me a while, but I got through it. And as I said, I have a separate vlog on this, so I don't really know what else much to say. It was an interesting experience, we'll say that. Very interesting. Mixed feelings, but I'm so glad that I read it. And I think the best part about it is now seeing where all these biblical references come out in different books and works of literature and films and songs and poetry and artwork. I mean, biblical references are everywhere. And I love knowing all of the stories now and all of the myths and the legends and the prophecies, and it was just a great experience. So I'm really glad that I stuck with it and I finished it. So along with the Bible Recap podcast that I was listening to, I got to a point where I decided to get the physical book of what the podcast is generated from. So this is a book called The Bible Recap. It's a 1-year guide, and it was written by Leigh Cobble. So this was really helpful for me, again, just to understand all the different readings. So this is a reading plan that you're meant to do over 365 days. I did it over a lot more than that, but I think this was really helpful in explaining each section that I was reading. It did have a very, very strong Christian bias or tone to it, though. So I think that if you're reading this book as someone who's not religious or atheist, this might be a little off-putting because it did feel a little bit apologetic in some ways, but it did help me to understand the Christian viewpoint of the Bible. And I highly recommend this if you are going to ever read the Bible and you're already have a strong foundation in Christianity and you find a lot of comfort in that, then this, I think, was an excellent companion to read along with the Bible. But if not, I wouldn't necessarily suggest this, unless you just want to understand the mind frame of a Christian mind, picking apart these different sections. So yeah, that was the Bible Recap, which I also finished, obviously. Okay, so another book that I really enjoyed for October was an audiobook I read called Clowns versus Spiders by Jeff Strand. And this one I did as part of a group read for Cliff's and Chris's channels. And they have a Discord called the Fright Club. And every month they pick a different book to do as a group read. And I thought this would be a great idea or a way for me to get into the horror genre a little bit more because I tend to shy away from it a little bit. When I first looked at the cover, I was like, I don't know. I'm not sure about this one. But I decided to give it a try, and I'm really glad I did because it was so funny. It was so good. It was the perfect mix of horror and humor, and just being in the Discord with them talking about the book was a lot of fun. So this is a story about a group of clowns that are really sweet and innocent. They love performing for children. They're the old-fashioned kind of clowns where they would perform at birthday parties and circuses and stuff. They loved making kids laugh. They just found a lot of joy working with children. So they end up losing their jobs, and they kind of get hired to work for this haunted house where they have to be the new version of clowns that we know now, which are this scary Pennywise type of clowns. So they all hate it. They hate making kids cry. They don't like scaring people. They're just kind of miserable. But they're working anyway and just trying to make ends meet. All of a sudden, their town becomes invaded by these giant wolf spiders. There's something supernatural about them. They're different. They feast off of humans. They're very aggressive. And this was a really fun book because the audio narration was really good, but the build up to some of the really scary spider scenes was very good, and I thought that the pacing was excellent. This was a pretty short book, so it felt like it was the perfect length for this type of story. The clowns are really lovable. There was one line, one of the female clowns, they're in a really horrible situation. People are dying all around them, and she says something like, we're all so focused on negativity. Maybe we should all go around the room and say something nice about spiders. Like, that just made me laugh. It's something that I would do, and it's just, bless her little heart for trying to stay positive in this like spider killing hellscape that they're all in. But just, it had such a great mixture of campiness and horror elements that I found it really fun. I just kept laughing at the imagery of these clowns running around the town, all dressed up with their scary makeup on, like smeared, and just trying to save the people and being like, you don't have to be afraid. We're just clowns in makeup. I don't know. It was fun. It was really funny. I'm really glad I participated in it, and I hope to participate in more of their picks in their horror book club. We'll see. Yeah, it's definitely more fun to read horror with a buddy, I think, than it is on your own. I gave that about 4 stars, and I would definitely read more from that author. And the final book that I read for October, and this was my favorite book of the month, this was called I Who Have Only Known Men by, I can't remember, Jaqueline G something. I don't know. You'll see it here. This book, it was very short. It's a science fiction dystopia telling the story of this woman who's not named. She doesn't have a name, I don't think, now that I think about it. But the premise is that she's one of 39 women that are trapped underground and living in a cage that is being guarded by men. They've been there for a long time. Our narrator is in her early 20s when the story starts, and I think they were put in the cage when she was 5. So the interesting thing is that she is the youngest one by a lot. So she was 5 when all these women were captured, and the rest of the women were at least 20 years old and older. So she grew up in this cage not knowing anything else. While the rest of the women in the cage, they had lives beforehand. Nobody remembers how they got there. The men don't speak with them. They're given very minimal things. They have just fabric to make clothes, and they get minimal food every night to make dinner. There's no clocks. The lights never go off. They have no concept of what time it is. They have no concept of what is going on in the outside world. Nobody knows. So the whole story is told from her perspective. And that's really all I want to say about it, because I think this is a book that you're better off going in blind and just knowing that tiny bit of premise, because it's so weird and interesting. And this book it was just one of those books that made me think so much. It made me think about this idea of what it means to survive, and how much stimulation do you need to be able to function as a person? What do people do in these extremely desensitized or desensorized environments where there's nothing? I mean, I will say one tiny little spoiler. This girl, this 5-year-old girl, she figured out how to count her heartbeats in order to try to generate an idea of a 24-hour day. So it was stuff like that. And then, it was so bleak, and you keep thinking the story is going to go a certain way, and it stays a different way. I think I'm going to do a separate review on this book, because I have so many thoughts about it, but it's not something that I want to get into spoilers with. I think that it was just really weird and interesting, and I absolutely loved it. Oh my gosh, I ended the video without even talking about my favorite book of the month, and I forgot that I read it in October. But I read my first Ray Bradbury book, and this was called Something Wicked, This Way Comes. And it was so good. It was so good. I was shocked by how much I enjoyed this. So Something Wicked This Way Comes is part of a trilogy called the Greentown Trilogy, I think. I think it's called that. I don't think that you have to read the books in any particular order though, but this was book number 2, and it tells the story of these 2 young boys, 13 or 14 years old, named Will and Jim, and what happens to them when this dark and mysterious circus rolls into town. Will is very sensible and a clear thinker. He kind of sees the whole picture. He kind of is getting an idea of what's happening. And then his friend Jim is very impulsive and adventurous and just flies by the seat of his pants, basically. So it just tells what happens to them when this carnival rolls into town. We also get another perspective from Will's dad, whose name is Charles, and he's an older dad in his mid-50s. And he's kind of reminiscing about missing what it's like to be young and to be strong and just adventurous, and you know, your body's at its prime and all that stuff. So we're getting these different perspectives, and then what happens when the circus comes. What I loved about this book was the atmosphere. The atmosphere was really dark and spooky, but not in a scary or disturbing way, really. It was just very dreamy. And when and Ray Bradbury has a really interesting writing style that I think some people might not like too much. It took me a little bit to get used to it, but once I did, I really liked it, and I thought it contributed so much to the overall atmosphere and tone of the story. And I thought that the villains were so creepy, and what they did and how they pursued these boys, and what happened when the townspeople got stuck in the circus, and you know, just what the whole story was and the point of it was. And I loved Charles's story so much because he was such an unlikely hero, and I don't want to say too much, but he just had a great arc and a great story, and the ending was perfect. And I loved this book so much. I can't decide which one I liked better, this one or I Who Have Never Known Men. They're both very different, and I like them for completely different reasons, but they were just books that made me think about, that I'm still thinking about, and I gave them both 5 stars. So thank you guys so much for watching. I really, really appreciate it, and I would love to know what you guys are reading or what you've been up to, how your November's going. Has it snowed yet for you guys? It hasn't snowed for us yet, which is really surprising. We always get a ton of snow by now, but it's coming. I know it is. So thanks again for watching, you guys. Take good care, and I will see you in my next video.